Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Well, good morning and welcome to Encounter. I'm your host today, Joe Sellepack. We're in the middle of Advent. This is the third Sunday coming up Advent as we make our way toward the Christmas season. And Advent usually is one of my favorite times of the year. However, this Advent has been very different as far as personal interactions, the celebrations of leading up to Christmas and other things that happen within the life of the church. To help me talk a little bit about these things, I've invited Tim Taugher, who's the pastor at St. Francis of Assisi Roman Catholic Church in Hillcrest. Good morning and welcome to Encounter.
Good morning, Joe. Thank you for the invitation.
So Tim, this is a strange year, I think. I think that's kind of saying putting it in a, like, I don't know. It's an understatement, maybe. It has been strange. So how has this year been at your congregation? How have you all adjusted?
Well, I guess for everyone, it's been a challenge. As I figure we're in the Advent season, as you mentioned, and you look back to March 15th, I know very well. I think that date's kind of in our minds or memories of when things really started to shut down, and this whole new life, I say that with question marks, began for us, this whole new experience of the pandemic taking hold of us. And, you think that at that time it was in the midst of the Lenten season, and midst of it, there was talk about, being open for Easter.
Yeah.
Easter came and went. We went through the Easter season, and I remember, thinking, well, it's going to be Pentecost Sunday, another liturgical, high point in the church, and then Pentecost came and went, and I remember our first public liturgies were on the feast of, in our tradition of the Catholic community, Christy Sunday, the feast of the body and blood of Christ,
Right.
which
Right.
in many ways was quite, it was a good connection, because we haven't been celebrating publicly the liturgy. So it was a fitting way to begin our public liturgies with the feast of Corpus Christi. Since then, it's been a challenge of, adapting to all these guidelines. And as we know, is when we started opening, we had one set of criteria, then it became, it changed all the way along, how many you can have, and, our spacing and process of having people come. So, that was a learning experience, in June and in the summer. So we've been, here we are in Advent, another liturgical season, and we're open. But our, the life of the parish is different. It's different, It can't, it's hard to get a grasp on it. We do have 3 liturgies every weekend, and our average, and I'm saying this in total for our three masses, is 140, 150 participating in a personal way, publicly, when we're used to, anywhere around 300, 350 or more, so, or even 400. So that shows that we're down, number-wise, substantially in our weekly liturgies. So it's just, I think it's interesting we're still in this Advent season.
Yeah.
And it's fitting too liturgically. because I just got done writing a homily for this weekend before I came on with you. As you said, we're in this third Sunday of Advent, and tradition in our churches, in our homes, for people to have an Advent wreath and lighting the candles during this Advent season. The 4 candles, and the whole thought of that is, we're lighting a candle to break the darkness, and that the darkness has been overcome by the light of Christ.
Right.
And so on this third Sunday of Advent, we celebrate, is also remembered as Gaudete Sunday, the first or the second reading about joy, rejoice.
Right.
And that's why I have this sweater on, or it's the rose color of the liturgical vestments, the liturgical color, and the candle that's lit. So we have that rose or pink colored candle as opposed to the purple or blue candles.
Yeah, I was taken by the Thessalonian reading about rejoice evermore, pray without ceasing, and everything give thanks. I was when I was reading through the lectionary for this week, I was saying to myself, I've got the pray without ceasing part down, I think, because it's been my children, both of my children were affected by the COVID virus. I have friends who are currently in ICU and at UHS, with the COVID virus. Other people that I know have been affected. And I get the pray without ceasing part. I understand that. But finding joy in the midst of the pandemic, because he makes that in it's not the indicative, it's a command. It's a rejoice evermore. And how do you find joy in the midst of what we're currently going through, do you think?
Well, I think because I've just been reflecting on that in a sense too, that you can't separate joy from hope.
Right.
Hope and joy are together, dance together, they're partners. And so I think you can have joy if you live with hope. It doesn't, it's not, just, everything's just beautiful. But, we can live with hope, or with joy, with hope. I love when I think of hope, I think it's from Romans. Correct me if I'm wrong. Hope does not disappoint, because the love of God has been, placed in our hearts and has been poured into our hearts. I think for me, I love that line, and what hope is all about. That we have hope because the love of God has been poured into our hearts. So I think, believe, the deeper we experience that love of God in our hearts, we can live with hope.
Yeah.
Even in this time.
Yeah, I get reminded of that passage from Paul where he talks about the currently we are experiencing labor pains, that there, at some point the world is, it's kind of like the world is in the birthing room with God, and God is trying to perform something in our midst that's kind of, beautiful and great, but we need to go through the pain of separation, the pain of, even if you were to look at our political situation at the moment, there's birth happening around us, but we get so myopically part of the pain that we can't see beyond it to perhaps what God is trying to do. Walter Brueggemann is one of, I think Walter as well as I do. Walter had, during the midst of the pandemic, he put out something about how, student loan interest, for instance, right now is canceled. you can pay off your principal on your student loan interest. And he was saying that wouldn't have happened without COVID virus. And he was like, he kept going through a litany. You know, we can choose to be a kinder, a gentler, more joy-filled community, even in the midst of our pain, because of what we're hoping for. And if we're hoping for the kingdom of God, then that kind of transforms how we view what we're currently going through. Do you think?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess when I hear in the conversation on the news or even with people, through this whole pandemic and everything, and I kind of inside say, I hope not. When we say, well, we can't wait till we go back to the way things used to be before this. Well, I don't register with that because I don't think we can't.
Right.
And what you're saying about birthing something new, I think this is a transformative experience and moment, and I think it's inviting us to do something new, and it's going to bring out new things. So things are not going to be the same as they were before, because I think it may have been if it was a month-long experience. But this has been a 7-month, it's going to be 8-month, 9-month experience. It's going to be a year.
Yeah.
But when we get to that March 15th in 21, it's going to be a year.
Yeah.
And so I think the impact of this is going to take a long time to work itself through us, and it has to be a new way of our lives and way we do things, church and government and communities.
Yeah, that's true. And it's interesting. I've had Jim Dutko on occasions, and one of his favorite icons for this season has Joseph and Mary and the whole entourage of the shepherds and the wise men in the tomb. With the tomb it's kind of like the manger is the tomb, and he brings together death and resurrection even in the midst of the Christmas season.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought of that as, for the wise men when they came, when they're making the journey toward the manger. The text says that after they receive a vision, they go home by a different way.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It seems like whatever we do in this moment, it transforms how we see the world, and we have to go home in a different kind of way. It redefines even perhaps what home means to us.
I always like that line. I always like that line in the narrative of the wise men. When they encounter the Christ, they, as you just said, go home in a different way. That's the way I think it is for us when we encounter Christ. You just don't go back to the way things were.
No,
it's a new vision, a new direction in our lives.
So my guest today is Tim Taugher, and we've been talking about how the COVID virus has impacted our ministries this year as we approach Advent and the Christmas season, and perhaps even how we approach this entire year, which has kind of left us all for a loop as we've been trying to figure out how to do ministry to people when we can't connect in the same ways. So we're currently talking a little bit about the wise men and going home by a different way. And my thought about it too is that, if you're getting ready for a baby, you transform the inside of your house too, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to go through the pain and the transformation of the inside of the house. Like I still remember when my kids were born, my wife and I did the whole nursery thing, put together put together, everything starts moving upward too, because the baby starts crawling and starts to walk, and then you have to move everything that's breakable up or anything that could hurt the child. It transforms really how you view life at that point. Um, how do you how does Christ transform how we view things and how do we go home in a different way in that way?
Hmm. I think that's it. We answer that question differently depending on our life, what we're going through personally, what our personal challenges are. So I think that, I think all of us can come at that in our own personal way, what this experience has been. Yeah, I just want to go back in the sense that Advent here that we're in, we've jumped ahead to the Epiphany, but
Right.
I just think, in midst of this pandemic and COVID-19, how I think Advent has taken on greater significance by the themes of Advent we talk about every year, but I think this year they take greater significance. That of a dark time of suffering, and where's the light, and that Advent is also a season of hope. And really,
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the main themes and focuses of Advent is that it's focused on hope, and I think that's great to have that. I think it's taken on. I think for myself thinking about it, it's taken on greater meaning than previous Advents.
Yeah. So the light shining into the darkness, the idea that there is something that we're looking for. But
Mm-hmm.
what are we looking for? I mean, that's obviously the question. What is it that we're shooting toward?
Well, I think again, you remind me of the gospel for this weekend, where John the Baptist is in the desert, and the authorities, the Pharisees, all come out, and all this talk about the Messiah. And what captured me at this gospel this weekend, I mean, there's so much in that gospel, that you could
Right.
concentrate on. But what I zeroed in on is that, there's one among you whom you do not recognize. That's I like that. I love that line. I think that's maybe something that's happened in the pandemic and what we're going through. Here, let's say with John the Baptist, there's one among you. Christ is right there, the Messiah. They don't even recognize, and how that happens throughout the scriptures. And I think that's what happened over the pandemic and all. We're finding Christ in ways that we should have recognized him before, as we call
Right.
essential workers and the hospital workers and hospital staffs and the poor, people in low-income housing and in the prisons, and where they're being hit the hardest. Our neighbor, who are alone or isolated. There's been people seeing them, maybe didn't see them before, now are seeing them. They're
Right.
Christ in their midst.
Right.
So I think in all of these experiences through this pandemic, we're coming to recognize the one among us who is Christ in these
Right.
experiences and in these people.
And that was kind of the lectionary reading before Advent even started, was that Matthew 25 passage about
Mm-hmm.
Christ. Yeah, Christ being with the hungry, with those who thirst, with the naked, with those who are in prison, and with the stranger. It seems that our head gets turned by our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, it's kind of interesting, in that passage, Matthew 25, when Jesus is talking, about the end times and the end judgment, both the shepherds, or both the sheep and the goats in that situation, both of whom one is being judged for what they did and what the other one is for what they didn't do. And neither one, though, recognized recognize Jesus within the people that were being served. How does the church follow that? I mean, that to me is just a really interesting idea that we just don't even know when we're with, because he seems to sometimes be intentionally mysterious.
Right, definitely. Well, when my Advent reading, part of my Advent reading, and also preparation for something we're going to do in the parish, our first time outside of liturgies, is to have like a book. We usually have a book club, but we're going to try it this after the holidays, Zoom. But I've been reading Pope Francis's new encyclical, and it really, what we're talking about. I think he's laying a foundation for all this. And it's on, it's in Italian, it's called Fratelli Tutti, on brothers and sisters all, but brothers and sisters all, but on social relationships, and really looking at our social, and he does it's just great insight, and refocusing on our connectedness, and relationships with one another, not just in a small way, but in more of a global way,
Right.
and a broader sense. And if we're going to have any success, it's how we strengthen those social relationships that make it inclusive and life-giving. So that's kind of what I've been that has been on my mind too during this Advent season, reading his in this encyclical.
Yeah.
It's well done. And I would recommend it for everyone. Francis is very inclusive, but it not a Catholic thing. It's like the encyclical on the environment, Laudato Si. This too is down to earth, practical, and I think everyone can do it. Many people can connect with it. In fact, it was signed with one I forget his name, an Islamic leader. He worked with him on it. I mean, which is quite unique.
Yeah, very unique. So, for people who may be experiencing Advent this year in a different kind of way, and they're lamenting about previous years, and they're caught kind of in that feeling of malaise and maybe depression, their despair. What would your advice to them be at this moment?
Wow. Just I guess we have to not look, look for the signs of hope. I mean, look for, and they can be small. It's like lighting a candle. Lighting these Advent candles. But if your room is totally dark and you light a candle, look, the light it gives off. I think I not underestimate the power of that symbol. Lighting one candle, and then two, three, gives great light, and it's just with one flame, and it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. I think we have to look for those one flames in our day-to-day existence that give us hope. They're very small, or they can be very great. And I think that's what you need. That's what we look for, and we can find joy in that. And that's where, in the midst of the despair over this pandemic, we can find hope and experience the joy that experience or person gives us.
And it's interesting to me that, one of the things that I found to be true for my church has been, the plethora of resources that are available to them online. They've been able to go online and find worship services occurring pretty much every day of the week.
Mhm.
You know, and that wasn't something that they necessarily would have done at one point in time. But it seems to me as if you're looking for areas like you were saying, where hope is there. The resources to lead you there are around you. Just need to kind of to light that candle to,
Mhm.
find that thing that's going to give you light.
One example I gave in my giving in my homily this weekend, I have a couple, but one I think is Margaret Keenan, 90-year-old woman who received the first vaccine shot in England. I mean, how people, people, news, the worldwide community latched onto that as, as there's hope. There's
Yeah.
hope, I mean, they were saying that there's hope at the end of the tunnel. Lighted at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, blue or the.
Well, Tim, this has been a great conversation, and I want to thank you for being on Encounter today. And for all of you that have been watching us this day, I pray that you would find some peace, find some light, light a candle, find some hope, because we're in the middle of some interesting times, but there is always hope. There is always something to be joyful about.
Right, right.
Have a great day. Amen.
Thank you.
Thanks.